Hello, everyone. My name is Viraj, and this is Abhishek, and we are going to talk about rich publisher apps in Chatter. So, before we start, before we, is it better now? Okay. So, before we start talking about what rich publisher apps are and how to build them, I would like to talk about why we chose to build rich publisher apps. So about a year ago, Abhishek and I were talking about how to make Chatter richer, more dynamic, and how to open it up to third-party services. To give you an example, maybe as a user, I want to attach Amazon item with my post and show real-time pricing and real-time rating of that item to my users, to my readers. Or maybe I want to do the same for iTunes. Or a simpler use case would be to attach a calendar invite in my post and let my readers accept or reject the invite in place without leaving the Chatter context. Or maybe I want to attach a sports score, a live sports score, and talk with my colleagues and my friends about which team is winning and which player is performing better. Or from business point of view, I want to attach a Salesforce object, standard or custom, and talk about that object with my readers. So while we were thinking about all of this, a hack day came along, and we prototyped something and built a platform over the year, which is not just addressing all these use cases that we talked about, but it also empowers our developer and partner communities to build their own rich publisher apps. So let's look into what exactly did we build. So we built a platform where org admin can download a rich publisher app either from App Exchange or enable a rich publisher app which is built internally. Once certain rich publisher apps are available in an organization, those rich publisher apps are available to all the communities in an org. And as a community admin, I can go to a community console to enable or disable certain rich publisher apps which are relevant to my community. Once those apps are available, as a user, I can go to a community Chatter publisher and I'll start seeing an icon next to attachment icon for a rich publisher app. When I click on that icon, I'll see a selection box where I can select what I really want to attach with my post and then save the post in the cloud. When we fetch this feed item, everything that is needed to render a rich publisher app along with the feed item is fetched and rendered with the feed item. A key concept here to understand is something called payload. So payload, as you can see, is a part of a feed item representation. It's a blob that, as a rich publisher app developer, you control. It could be a string or a base 64 encoded JSON object or whatever it could be. It's a blob for us, and we associate this payload with the feed item and fetch that payload and send with the feed item when feed item is fetched through any of the APIs. Now that we know why we built it and what exactly it is, I would like Abhishek to take us through how exactly to build it.
Okay, so let's get into it. Rich publisher apps. So there are essentially four main components that form what we call rich publisher apps. There's a composition component, which is a lightning component. There's a render component, which is another lightning component. There's an icon, which is what you see in the publisher, which is essentially just an image file. And then we have some localizable labels to help the users out. So let's sort of get into how we build these things step by step. First step, we actually create the icon. And if you sort of step into our community app to actually get into it, let's go to a publisher. We have a very nice community here. So icon is essentially these icons. Right now we have about 3 different icons, and these are what you would actually add. And you can sort of use our best practices docs and things like that and add an image to sort of create that icon. After you have that, the next part is actually creating the lightning component for composition and rendering. So when we actually click the icon, we open something called the composition modal, which actually has a lightning component inside of it. And these are basically things that you can attach, as Viraj was pointing out. So let's basically get into how we actually built this out, right? So if we go into a dev console, look into a bit of the code. So this is one of the components. This is a case composition component, and this is essentially the lightning component to build the composition modal. So I'll just step into what are the key sort of parts here. So the one of the main things here is the Lightning interface, Lightning available for Chatter Extension Composer. And this is what we provide as part of the platform. And this is basically what gives you the attributes and events and things like that you would need to make this component functional. We have the interface, and also you can just add any sort of Apex controller, server-side controllers to add logic. Then we have like a list of items to just want to maintain, some markup to actually get those list items to render, and then just an aura iteration to sort of iterate through those. So if we sort of get into the controller, we see we have the init, which is just basically fetching all the cases through helper, and this is basically making an Apex server-side request to fetch all the cases through a Socket query. And then we have a selected and load mode. To get into what selected is, let's sort of step into what happens. So by default, you see the add button here is disabled because there's nothing really selected for the user to actually add to their feed item. So once we actually select something, or we select something off, we see the add button is actually enabled, and that's sort of part of the platform. And all you as a Lightning component developer need to do is just fire this event. And this event is basically sent Chatter extension payload, which comes as part of the interface, and you sort of pass certain parameters, including the payload, which is what Viraj was just talking about.
Yeah, a payload, as I was saying, could be, in this case, it could be a case ID, and you can key a case ID to a data that you'll fetch dynamically and then show a dynamic content, a current state of a case, or it could be a static information where you're capturing a snapshot of a case and attaching it with the feed item.
Right, and in this case, we are essentially doing that. We just sort of have some static information about the case ID, the link, and things like that. And along with that, we also pass in certain other data, extension title, extension description, extension thumbnail URL, and these are all essentially metadata about that instance of the Rich Publisher app, which will help us to give a rich preview in non-Lightning clients like emails, classic view, and things like that. Right? So once you actually have all these params set, you can just fire the event, and that will enable the button. Right? So we have the button enabled. Let's see what happens if we do add. So once we actually add, we see that we have another component, which is essentially just one list item that is rendered here. And this is the render component. This is the second Lightning component that you need to create. Sort of get into what this is. Let's step into code. This is pretty straightforward. We have another interface here, Lightning available for Chatter extension render, which is also part of the platform that we provide. And we actually have two attributes in it right now. We have the payload attribute, which is what the payload we just actually get from the feed item that is associated with the feed item to give more context of what this Rich Publisher app is. And then we have the variant. So variant is pretty key here. Variant is what determines where this component is being rendered. So right now the variant is preview because it's being rendered inside the publisher state, right? So you can look up the variant and sort of control logic differently based on it, whether if you want different logic for preview mode, different logic for feed mode, different styling, things like that. So right now you can see we are just basically using the variant to have a different class to add some styling to it. So let's just create this. Let's start it off. Can someone help me with this case? So once we do that, we see the feed item is created, and we can actually go to the case and actually have a conversation about it. And it gives a really rich preview. And again, right now this is like a static preview, but you can make it dynamic, you can make it live by providing it more interactions, providing live status update of the case and things like that. And that is basically power to the Lightning component developer. So after we've gone to rendering, so let's take a step back to our slides. Once we create the Lightning components, next step is to actually create the Rich Publisher app in Workbench, right? So how org admins and community admins can actually access it. To do that, just need to go to Workbench, go data, insert a Chatter extension object, and just need to associate all the different components that you sort of built up, right? So the first one was the composition Lightning component. You just need to associate the ID of that. Then we have the text, and these are the header and hover text. These are localizable text that's available for the admin to go to translation Workbench and pretty easily localize. And this is what you see when you hover over the icon or when you open the composition modal. After that, we have the icon ID, and this is the ID of the image that you basically see as the icon in the publisher. After that, we have the render component, and this was the sort of the second component, which is rendered in the publisher and in the feed item. Finally, we have type. Right now, only we have Lightning type available as the type for Rich Publisher apps. Finally, after that, step 4 and last step is basically enabling Rich Publisher apps in your community workspace. Right? So once you actually created it in Workbench, you have uploaded it to App Exchange, or if you just want to use it in your own org, you can simply just go to Workspaces, go to Administration, go to Rich Publisher Apps, and select all the rich publisher apps that you want to enable. So right now in our org, in our community, we have already enabled the 4 rich publisher apps we have available, but we can just sort of see all the apps available on left, sort of take them to the right, order any way you want, and it will be reflected inside in your publisher. So yeah, so let's just see some other rich publisher apps that we have here. So if you go into the publisher, we see we have some other icons. We already went through a case flow. So let's see what this is. This says attach a Trailhead module with your post. So if you select it, we see a bunch of Trailhead modules that we can sort of go over, select, or whatever. So let's select one of those. And we see the preview state is now formed. Similarly, we can look at GIFs, and we can add a GIF. We can search through GIFs, see GIFs right now. So this is a great example of how you can sort of associate third-party APIs. And here what we are doing is we basically have an Apex controller which is making a request to a third-party API to fetch some GIFs. And you can search through them, look up whatever GIFs you want. Right now we have some Dreamforce GIFs by default. So let's just load one of those. We add it. We see the preview state. And we say, let me try again. TF. Let me try to attach another one quickly. Add a GIF, and we ask. And we see the DF demo post here. So this sort of gives a good idea of some basic use cases, and you sort of get an idea of how you can sort of attach some Lightning components, whether it's static, whether it's live, whether it's through third-party APIs. You can make it interactive and do a lot of stuff. But let's sort of get into some advanced use cases of how really you can sort of leverage the Salesforce platform and how you can leverage this Rich Publisher Apps platform to build out some really rich use cases. So we're here at Dreamforce. Let's say if you are looking for some cool sessions, right? We're just starting Dreamforce off. So let's say looking for some DF sessions, right? And let's say some cool DF sessions, and I do, and I just do a hashtag there, right? And I'm not attaching anything right now, but I just do ask. So notice how there was a map that was automatically inserted, right? So we basically said we're looking for some sessions, and we did a hashtag looking for sessions, and there's a map which is actually zoomed into the Dreamforce campus right now. So let's say somebody asked a question, and just to sort of, for the sake of the demo, if I was to answer it, so let's say I know a pretty cool session to start off. So let's say how to build rich publisher apps at Moscone West, right? And I answer that. And I see the map was actually updated with a pin to that session at Moscone West, right? And let's say if I was to say something, streamlining lining CRM with AI, which is a session at Intercontinental Hotel. Something like that. And sort of updates the map and adds a pin to the Intercontinental Hotel. And these are all corroborating with the comments. So we can basically get a rich live preview of all this interaction that is happening right now. And what exactly is happening here is, right, so when you actually create a post, we attached a feed item trigger to the after insert of the post. And we basically look out for some text, right? So in this context, we look out for text of looking for certain sessions or looking for Dreamforce sessions or things like that, right? We have certain keys for the words to look out for, right? And once we do that, we associate a map with the feed item. Once we have the map, we just basically look for comments, and through comment triggers, we sort of watch out for what sessions are being inserted. We sort of just associate those particular sessions or the location for those sessions in the map and put a pin on them. And that's how you get a really end-to-end flow and a really rich preview of how sort of you can have this conversation. And this is just a very basic use case to sort of address like our environment right now. But like you can sort of build out several different use cases built on that and sort of connect it with feed items and comment triggers and things like that. So that's basically the advanced use case. And I'll sort of hand over to Viraj for the rest of it.
Yeah, so that's what we wanted to cover. I hope you got what you were looking for from this session. And We have some public documentation which covers all of this, but in much more details. And there is also a GitHub repo for a starter template. So it has a lot of boilerplate code, and you just need to go and plug in your code to fetch the item, select the item, and then save it. And there is a Trailhead and developer blog coming up too. And last but not the least, unfortunately, you don't have the app that Abhishek just demoed, but these are some interesting sessions that we would recommend you to go and check it out. Thank you very much.